Silence is one of the most powerful tools you have. Not because it's passive, not because it's easy, but because it forces someone to feel the weight of their own actions. When you ignore a man who has taken you for granted, dismissed your worth, or failed to appreciate what he had, you are not just stepping away, you are making a statement. And that statement is far louder than any words you could ever say. We live in a world where people expect instant responses. They expect to have access to you at all times. They assume that if they hurt you, they will still hear from you in some form, whether it's anger, sadness, or an attempt at closure. But when you remove yourself completely, that's when reality starts to hit. See, the human mind struggles with gaps. We are wired to seek closure, to understand what's happening, to know where we stand. The moment you go silent, he is forced to sit in the uncertainty of his own choices. He starts to wonder, did I make a mistake? Why hasn't she reacted? Is she moving on? These questions don't just pass through his mind once. They linger, they grow, they consume, because now he doesn't have you feeding him reassurance. Whether that reassurance came through anger or sadness, it was still a connection. And now that connection is severed. People often think ignoring someone is childish, but that's only true if you're doing it to play games. This isn't about mind games. It's about showing rather than telling what happens when someone disrespects your presence. When words no longer work, when explanations and justifications have been exhausted, the only thing left is absence. And absence creates impact. Think about it. Why do we grieve people when they're gone? Why do we suddenly appreciate something more once it's out of reach? Because loss forces reflection. When you are constantly there, constantly responding, constantly trying to be understood, you are relieving him of the burden of reflection. You are making it too easy for him to live without consequence. But when you remove yourself, he has no choice but to feel the emptiness you left behind. And here's the truth. If he truly valued you, that emptiness will become unbearable. It won't happen overnight, and it won't happen in the way you might expect. At first, he might feel fine. He might assume you'll come back, that you'll reach out, that this is temporary. But as time stretches on, as the silence remains, the discomfort begins. And discomfort is the birthplace of realization. This is where he starts to notice the small things, the good morning texts that aren't there anymore, the way you used to check in on him, even when he was too distracted to notice, the warmth of your energy, your care, your presence. He may not have appreciated it when he had it, but now, in your silence, he is forced to. And that's the beauty of silence. It doesn't argue, it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain itself. It just is. And in its simplicity, it carries a weight that no amount of words ever could. But here's the most important part. Your silence should not be about him. It should be about you, about reclaiming your energy, your self-worth, your peace. This isn't about making him suffer, though he likely will. It's about making yourself unavailable to someone who didn't see your value when you were right in front of him. Because if he doesn't realize it, if he never comes back, that's your answer. And that's the beauty of silence. It not only reveals the truth about others, but it reveals the truth about yourself. So if you ever find yourself questioning whether ignoring him is the right move, ask yourself this. Has talking worked? Has explaining worked? Has giving more of yourself to someone who gives less in return ever made them appreciate you more? You already know the answer. And if that's the case, maybe it's time to let your silence do the talking. There's a misconception that if you want someone to regret losing you, you have to make them jealous, prove you've moved on, or craft the perfect message that makes them realize what they lost. But the truth is, none of that has the same effect as simply removing your energy altogether. Ignoring him isn't about punishment, it's about forcing him to experience the loss of you in a way that words never could. See, people don't truly feel the absence of something until they no longer have access to it. As long as you're responding, as long as you're still engaging, even if it's just to express hurt or frustration, you are providing him with a sense of security. He knows you still care. He knows that deep down, there's still a chance. And as long as he knows that, he doesn't have to feel the weight of his actions. But when you go silent, when you withdraw your attention completely, that's when the real shift happens. Because now he's left alone with his own thoughts. And that's where regret begins. The human mind is fascinating. It has a way of rewriting history when faced with loss. At first, he might not feel it. He might even assume he made the right choice in letting you go. But as time goes on, something starts to change. change. He begins to remember the good times more than the bad. He starts to focus on the moments when you made him feel special, when your presence brought warmth into his life. And without you there to remind him of anything else, those are the memories that grow stronger. Psychologists call this the rosy retrospection effect, a tendency to look back on the past more favorably than we experienced it in the moment. And that effect becomes even more intense when we lose something we once had. When you ignore him, when you step back completely, you give him the space to start idealizing you. And the longer he goes without you, the more he feels it. Suddenly, the things he took for granted start standing out. The little ways you showed up for him, the things you did that no one else has done since. It all starts to become clearer, and here's where it gets even more interesting. When someone can't have access to you anymore, their desire to get it back intensifies. Think about it, we crave what is scarce. When something is easy to obtain, we don't value it as much. But when it's taken away, that's when we start to want it more. It's the same reason why people suddenly want what they can't have, why an item that's sold out becomes more desirable, why an ex who once seemed indifferent now starts to reconsider once you've moved on. This isn't just psychological, it's biological. Studies show that when something we once had is suddenly removed, the brain reacts by increasing dopamine levels, making us crave it even more. That's why when you ignore him, his mind starts to obsess over you. It's not just emotional, it's chemical. But here's the thing, none of this works if you're still secretly waiting for him to notice. If you're checking his social media, if you're subtly hinting at your absence, if you're ignoring him but hoping he reaches out first, he'll sense it. And if he senses that you're still emotionally tied to him, the effect is lost. True power comes from genuinely stepping back, from deciding that your value isn't dependent on whether he realizes what he lost. Because when you can do that, when your silence is rooted in self-worth rather than strategy, that's when it has the strongest impact. And if he never comes back, that's your answer. The man who was meant to be in your life will feel your absence and he will do something about it. If he doesn't, then he was never truly invested in the first place. So don't waste time trying to make him see your worth. Remove yourself and let time do the work for you. Let him sit with the silence. Let him wonder. Let him feel the loss. And in that space, you'll find something even more important: your own peace. One of the biggest mistakes people make after a breakup or when they feel someone slipping away is trying to fill the silence with noise. They check in, they send a casual message, they like a post on social media, they convince themselves that they're just being friendly, just keeping the door open, just reminding that person of what they had. But here's the harsh truth. The more you do that, the less they feel your absence. And if they don't feel your absence, they will never experience regret. See, we live in a world where attention is currency. Everyone is competing for it. The moment you give someone yours freely, especially after they've hurt you, you make it easy for them. You remove the discomfort of loss. You give them certainty. And certainty is the opposite of longing. If you want someone to truly feel the weight of losing you, they need to face the uncertainty of your absence. They need to wonder. They need to sit with the questions that come when someone suddenly goes quiet. What is she thinking? Did she move on? Does she even miss me? Those questions don't arise when you're still lingering in their world, even in subtle ways. But when you step back completely, when you allow the silence to stretch long enough, that's when their mind starts to work against them. And here's what most people don't understand. Silence isn't just about absence. It's about creating space for their own emotions to catch up with them. Because in the immediate aftermath of a breakup or a shift in dynamics, people don't always feel the full impact right away. They distract themselves. They tell themselves they made the right decision. They focus on anything that keeps them from dealing with the emotional consequences of their actions. But time has a way of peeling back distractions. Eventually, the initial relief fades. The excitement of whatever they thought they wanted starts to dull. And in that quiet, when they're no longer running from it, the reality of loss sets in. That's when they start noticing the small things, the absence of your texts, the lack of your voice in their life, the empty space where your energy used to be. And here's the most powerful part. They don't just miss you, they start questioning themselves. Did I make a mistake? Why do I feel this way now? Is she really gone for good? That internal dialogue is where regret is born. And the key to triggering that? Discipline. The discipline to resist the urge to reach out. The discipline to trust that your absence is more powerful powerful than any text you could send, because the second you break your silence, you give them relief. Even if all you say is, hey, even if it's just a simple interaction, you've just let them off the hook. You've confirmed that you're still there, that they don't actually have to fear losing you completely. And here's something even deeper. Silence doesn't just make them question their choices, it forces them to reevaluate your worth. Because when someone pulls away, when they assume they can walk away and you'll always be an option, they don't see you as valuable. They see you as available. And availability without effort breeds complacency. But when you remove yourself, when you stop offering your energy so freely, that's when they realize something they never had to confront before. Your presence was a privilege, and privileges, when taken for granted, don't always come back. That's why the longer you stay silent, the more powerful it becomes. It shifts the balance. It moves you from someone who is waiting to be chosen to someone who has already chosen themselves. And that kind of self-respect is magnetic. So if you're sitting there wondering if he's thinking about you, if he misses you, if he regrets how he treated you, stop. Shift your focus. Let him sit with the silence. Let him feel the weight of your absence. Let him experience what it truly means to lose you. And if he doesn't, if he can go weeks or months without reaching out, then congratulations. You've just received undeniable proof that he was never invested in the first place. And that is a gift, because now you're free to give your energy to someone who will actually value it. Silence is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is the ultimate test of someone's true feelings. And when used correctly, it speaks louder than any words ever could. When someone pulls away from you, the instinctive reaction is often to chase, to seek closure, or to remind them of what they're losing. But what if I told you that the most powerful thing you can do is the exact opposite? Because the truth is, people don't fully appreciate something until they feel the void it leaves behind. When you step back, not just physically, but emotionally, you create a space where the reality of your absence starts to sink in. And that space is where real impact happens. Think about it like this. When you remove a familiar presence, the mind doesn't immediately recognize the loss in its entirety. At first, it feels like a temporary change, something that might revert back at any moment. But as time stretches on, that absence becomes more pronounced. It starts to take up mental space. And with that mental space comes discomfort. People don't feel loss in the way we often imagine. It's not always a sudden, dramatic moment of regret. More often, it's a slow realization, a creeping awareness that something is missing, that what once felt stable and certain is no longer within reach. And here's where it gets really interesting. This realization isn't just about missing you. It's about the confrontation of their own emotions, their own choices, and their own ego. Because when you remove yourself, you're forcing them into a mirror they might not be ready to look into. You're taking away the safety net of knowing you're always there. And in doing so, you're making them question their own decisions. Did I take her for granted? Why does this feel harder than I expected? Is it too late to fix things? That's the beauty of space. It forces reflection, and reflection leads to a shift in perception. Now, here's where most people go wrong. They assume that if they wait long enough, the other person will just come running back. But that's not the point. The point isn't to manipulate someone into missing you. It's to give them the opportunity to truly understand what life looks like without you in it. And sometimes that realization takes longer than we'd like. It doesn't happen on our schedule. It doesn't follow a predictable timeline. But when it does happen, it carries far more weight than any words ever could. Because when someone comes back on their own, when they reach out because they genuinely feel your absence, not because you nudged them or reminded them, but because they experienced the loss firsthand, that's when you know it's real. That's when you know it's not just convenience, but true recognition of your value. And if they don't come back, if they can go weeks, months, even years without acknowledging what they lost, then that's your answer. That silence isn't just space, it's clarity. It's proof that they never felt your presence deeply enough to begin with. This is where your strength comes in, because choosing to step back, choosing to create space, requires an immense amount of discipline. It requires trusting that your value isn't isn't tied to your availability, that you don't need to remind someone of what you bring to the table. Your absence should do that for you. Think of it like a great song. The first time you hear it, you might enjoy it, but it's only when you don't hear it for a while that you suddenly find yourself humming the melody, craving the sound, realizing how much it added to your world. That's what space does in relationships. It allows someone to hear the silence in a way they never expected. So the question isn't, how can I make him miss me? The question is, am I strong enough to create the space necessary for him to feel my loss? Because if you are, that's where the real transformation happens. People don't value what they don't have to work for. They don't cherish what is always within reach, and they don't regret losing what never truly felt lost. So take a step back, hold your ground, let the space do its work, and if he was ever truly meant to see your worth, he will. Not because you forced it, but because your absence made it impossible to ignore. When you ignore him, something fascinating happens. It shifts the dynamic in a way that forces him to confront an uncomfortable truth. He no longer has control over your emotions, and that realization is powerful. See, when someone knows they have access to you, that they can reach out and get a response, there's no urgency, no real fear of loss. Even if they hurt you, even if they took you for granted, as long as you're still there, reacting, checking in, even arguing, they don't fully feel the impact of their actions. But silence is deafening. Ignoring him isn't about playing games. It's not about punishing him or pretending to be indifferent when you're not. It's about making a firm statement, one that doesn't need words. And that statement is simple. You don't get access to me so easily anymore. And here's where psychology comes into play. Humans crave validation. We crave reassurance that we matter, that we still hold significance in someone's life. So when you pull away, when you refuse to engage in the way he's used to, it creates a psychological trigger. Suddenly, he starts questioning things. Why isn't she responding? Has she really moved on? Did I misjudge how much she cared? At first, he might brush it off. He might assume it's temporary, that you'll break and reach out eventually, but the longer your silence lasts, the more that confidence begins to waver. And what was once casual indifference on his part starts turning into something else. Uncertainty, curiosity, even regret. Because here's the truth. When someone gets used to having you in their life, they rarely stop to think about what it would be like without you. They assume you'll always be there, that no matter how they act, they can count on your presence. But when you remove that, when you take away that certainty, that's when they start to feel it. That's when the pain of losing you stops being an abstract idea and becomes something real. And this is where most people struggle, because silence feels unnatural. It feels passive. When everything in you wants to take action, send that message, get that closure, remind him of what he lost. But you have to resist that urge, because silence isn't passive. It's the most powerful action you can take. Think of it like this. Imagine someone owes you an apology. If you keep engaging, reminding them, trying to make them see their mistake, they have no real reason to sit with their own thoughts. They're too busy reacting to you. But if you stop, if you walk away and say nothing, that's when they're left alone with their own conscience. That's when they're forced to sit with what they've done without your energy distracting them from it. Ignoring him does the same thing. It removes the noise, the distractions, and leaves him with only one thing, his own thoughts. And that's where regret begins to grow. Because now it's not about you trying to convince him of your worth. It's about him realizing it on his own. And that realization is far more powerful than anything you could ever say. But let me be clear, this isn't about waiting around for him to miss you. It's not about sitting in silence just to get a reaction. It's about reclaiming your power. It's about recognizing that you don't need to keep proving your value to someone who should have seen it in the